All right, 3.5, the discriminant. What is it? So when we're dealing with the quadratic formula, which we talked about in the last video, the discriminant is a part of that formula. It is this thing, the part that's under the radical sign. So specifically, b squared minus 4ac. This is a powerful piece of information because it can give you an answer without having to do much work. So a lot of questions will ask you, how many solutions? Okay, they will ask you how many solutions there are or how many roots. They're the same thing, okay? You need to be able to figure it out, and the clue to figuring it out is this. So I'm going to show you the 3 ways you can tell, and we kind of talked about it in the last video. The idea is, because you're square rooting, it will give you special answers. So let's say that our discriminant ended up being square root of 4. Okay? When we square root 4, there's actually 2 possible answers. It can either be positive 2 or it can be negative 2. So because of that, that leads us to having 2 solutions. And what you'll find is that when you square root any number that is greater than 0, you will get 2 roots, always. So we can say when you square root, let's call this x. No, let's call it d for discriminant. When d is greater than 0, 2 solutions. Okay. There's another special case we need to think about when we square root the actual number 0. When you square root 0, you get 0. So when we look at our quadratic formula, if we took this part out, it would just be x is equal to negative b over 2a. Because the square root of 0 is 0, it doesn't matter. This would only give us one answer. So when we do that, when we square root 0, so when d is equal to 0, there's only one solution. Okay. The third option is when we square root something that is less than 0, a negative number, so negative 5 or something. We can't actually square root negative 5, so that gives us no solutions. These are the 3 possible situations. So based on what your question is, you can quickly find out how many solutions there should be. So let's quickly look at one example. 5x squared minus 8x plus 6 equals 0. So I want to find out how many solutions there are without doing the actual question. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at the part that was under the radical, the discriminant. So b squared minus 4ac. So let's sub the numbers in and see what we get. So b squared is going to be negative 8 squared minus 4, 5, 6. When we sub the numbers in, I get 64 minus 120. So when I look at that, that ends up being a negative number. I don't actually care what it is. I don't have to find it. It's negative. I know when I square root a negative number, it's not possible. So I right away know there's no solution. And I can say that. What I do to remember, a lot of students try and memorize discriminant in the equation and stuff like that. You don't have to memorize it. Just think of your quadratic formula and just remember that it's the square root part. And again, the same rules with like, oh, does it need to be greater than 0, equal to 0, less than 0, whatever. Just try and think of what it means. When it's negative, can you square root a negative? No. So that means there's no solutions. When you square root 0, you get nothing. So it's just like you're looking at this and there's going to be one solution. When you square root something else, like square root 4, you get 2 because you get that plus minus. So that's where you have the 2 situations. That's the core thing to understand and remember so that when you're doing questions, you can do it. There is one other weird type of question your textbook gives you, and it looks like this. Okay, actually, let me get rid of stuff. Okay, so it's going to give you situations like this where it says, what's the value of k if you have 1 solution, 2 solutions, 0 solutions, whatever. So let's say the question is asking for 2 solutions. Okay, what's the number for k? Be very careful because, yeah, I could just shove in random numbers and eventually figure it out, but there's a smarter way we can do this. Again, we know the discriminant. So the discriminant, we know that if we want 2 solutions, this discriminant has to be a number that's greater than 0. So I'm going to write that. Okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sub in all the numbers in this equation to find out the answer. So let's sub in the numbers. So b is negative 5 minus 4 A, and then for C, it's K. I don't actually know what it is, greater than 0. So let's solve this a little bit. 25 minus 12K is greater than 0. So now, all I have to do is rearrange to actually find the answer. So I'm going to move 12K to the other side by adding. 25 is greater than 12K. Okay, and then I'm going to divide both sides by 12 to isolate K, and you end up getting K is less than 25 over 12. So basically the answer to this question would be any number that you put in, as long as K is less than 25 over 12, is going to give you 2 answers. Okay? If the question had said instead that it wanted, one solution instead of 2 solutions, we would have changed the equation. The equation would have changed here. We would have said, well, if we only want 1 solution, we want it to equal 0. And when we equal 0, we rearrange and save it in the same way. Okay? Same with if we wanted to have 0 solutions. Then we would have to change it so, we need it to be a negative, so we need it to be less than 0. Do some practice questions. That's it for the discriminant. Quadratic formula is much more important than the discriminant because it actually helps you solve questions. This just helps you understand questions before you solve them. That's it.